So I'm in the shop this morning. I got a few minutes to kill, and I decided to show you guys a little bit on how to solder a copper pipe. So there's three things you need that are critical when you're doing soldering, and these three things are gonna make a huge difference between whether this is a really easy task or extremely difficult one. The first thing is you need to make sure the copper is really clean. Now, if you see, you look at this copper up close, you can see there's oils and dirt and all kinds of stuff on there. You need to get that off because that will prevent the solder from bonding with the copper really well. So you're gonna need something to clean the fittings off with. And so I have some sand cloth here. I also have a wire brush. And the reason why you need both of these is because any two copper surfaces that are going to be touching need to be clean. So I'm going to be using a little 45 elbow here. And as you can see, the copper pipe itself has to be cleaned on the outside, which is what I'm going to use the sand cloth for. And the copper inside the fitting is going to have to be cleaned, which is what I'm going to use the wire brush for, so that these two copper surfaces, when they're together, when this fitting is together, they're very clean. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this copper fitting here, and you just want to get it really, really clean. You want it to get it as shiny as possible. You don't want to see any dirty lines in there or anything. So you can see how clean that surface is. The cleaner you get it, the easier your soldering will be. All right, so there we go. That looks pretty good there. All right, so we got the outside of that piece. Now we're going to clean the inside of the fitting. So like I said, the cleaner you get this, the easier your solder is going to go. So it makes a huge difference. Just a little bit of dirt on there, even just the oils from your fingers, these things can make the soldering very, very difficult because it won't bond very well. So as you can see, we got the inside of this fitting nice and clean. Personally, I even like to take the sand cloth and just clean up the edge of the fitting itself. A lot of guys don't do this, so a lot of times it's really not even that necessary, but I like to do it because it just seems to help. All right. So the second thing that is essential to make soldering very easy for you is the soldering flux here. So what this does is it helps clean the surface of the copper down at a chemical level. So whatever oils might still be on there, this is going to kind of eat away at it, helps deoxidize the fittings, and this is essential to get the bond that you need between the solder and the copper itself. So when you apply this, a lot of times these come with a brush. If you don't have one, they sell the brushes separately, but you want to clean the outside of the copper pipe that will be sliding into your fitting. Okay, and you want to get it all the way down. You want to go past where the joint is going to actually be. So when I put this copper fitting all the way down into the bell, you can see the flux extends way beyond that. So I'm not just fluxing up in the top here, I'm going way beyond where I need to be. All right, you also need to flux the inside of the fitting. And again, I like to do the edges just for extra measure. All right, so now you slide the two together. And then once you have the two pieces together like that, you also want to go ahead and spread some flux right around that joint, all the way around. All right, so now we got the coppers all cleaned up. We got our flux on there. So those first two things are the most critical, the cleaning of the copper and the addition of the flux. The final element that is essential to make this either really easy or really hard for you is flame control. Soldering does not require a whole lot of heat, so you can use something as simple as a turbo torch like I have here. If you're using like acetylene torches or anything like that, you want to make sure you have a very small tip on it. A larger tip is going to be a little too much heat, unless you're doing very large copper piping, like 2-3 inch copper pipes, then a larger tip might make things go a little faster. But for a 3/4 pipe that we're working with here today, you're going to want to use a small tip. But we don't need that. We're going to be using the turbo torch today. So when it comes to flame control, first thing you need to know is that the solder is always going to want to flow towards the source of heat. So wherever you point this flame, that's where the solder is going to want to go. So when we actually start soldering this, you're not going to want to point your flame down here below the joint. And the reason why is because we want to get the solder up inside this bell in between the copper pipe and the surface of the copper fitting itself. We want to squeeze it right in there. So if our torch is down here, the copper's not going to want to flow up into that joint. So when we hit it, we want to hit it from up top and in the sides and so forth. So let me go ahead and clamp this into place. I'm going to start my torch up. Start heating up, and you're going to see the flux just kind of melt off right away. You want to kind of go around, heat up the whole fitting. Like I said, you don't need a whole lot of heat. So one of the things I do is a little bit of what I call a touch test. Right? You want to put the flame on there, up on the bell, and then just kind of, you can see how the solder just went right up in there. And once I got the solder to melt like that, I just kind of use the flame to push it around. You don't need to keep feeding it in like crazy. That's all it really takes. And then when I'm done, I like to take a rag and just clean all that off. The reason why you want to clean it off is because that flux, if you leave it on there and you don't clean it off, it can, after time, kind of corrode away at the copper. I have seen fittings turn green because of it. So we have a very nice, very clean joint there. I know it's hard to see with the video, but there's no gaps in there. I could see it. It's beautiful.